Looks like it's live.
It-
All right, I'm here with Alex Cohen, and I'm Matthew from Autism Digest. We are here to interview Alex and hear a little bit of information about, his background and what kind of amazing things he's working on, and future plans, and kind of a little bit about his story. So, thanks so much for doing this, Alex. I always love talking to you.
Oh, my pleasure. Hey, thank you for having me. It's awesome.
Well, so before we started, we were talking a little bit about just kind of how you were part of or you're still part of Drummers Collective, correct?
Yes.
I thought you could talk a little bit about that, just like how that community helped you get where you are, and just how you keep, you're always working on new cool stuff. And I thought it'd be pretty inspirational for other, because we're going to turn this into an article also, but for people watching, just a little bit about, how that community helped you get where you are.
Well, okay. So basically, the way that worked was I started studying at Drummers Collective when I was 12 years old. I took my first lesson there. And the teacher did not want to teach me because I had severe learning issues. I mean, goes with the territory, I suppose. And I did not take to this naturally, which I think seems to be a misconception now, that I do take to this naturally, or that for some reason this came easily to me. It didn't. So that teacher was eventually persuaded by my dad to actually let me study with him. And it turned out that while I didn't get it naturally, I had an apt for learning it and practicing. So what I lacked in natural ability, I made up for in just the willingness to do leg work, pretty much. And therefore, I didn't have many friends in middle school. High school was better, but that was just because I was at an arts high school, so we were all just doing our own thing. And the community really became, it wasn't just Drummers Collective, but it was really a lot of the metal community too. And so I fly my colors whenever I can of bands that I like, or the people I enjoy spending time with.
Yeah.
And so being part of that community was really great, because I've always said that most of the time the metal people are the coolest people. And so that was a big thing for me. As of late, well, I should say, I was still obviously involved with the collective, studying there privately till it was through college. And then I would later become again, I went off and just pursued my thing throughout my mid-20s. Then my late 20s, I came back and we started Alex and Tobias videos on a whim, literally, of me tagging him in a Facebook video that I shot on my iPhone. And then we met up and started doing those videos. And from that, Murder Hands developed. And Murder Hands to me was the community that I still feel part of. Those guys are my brothers, basically. So though Murder Hands was a big part of establishing that community, but also social media has played a big part of it in meeting a lot of drummers who I would not have been able to connect with. I mean, Yoni, Madar, Ramon, three of us connected that way. And then others like Pete Drummond. You got phenomenal players. I mean, Justin Scott, Jonathan Colin Green, a lot of these just ridiculous drummers who I would connect with there and form bonds with at NAMM or wherever. And so that became its own community too, and really great friendships through that. So people are my family, but yes, the collective played a huge part in really getting me into the instrument and keeping me on the instrument and inspiring me to kind of go forward. And again, my mentor when I was a teenager, I mean, I still consider my mentor to this day, Jonathan Mover was big as well. So He and I joke we are gray old men now, but still kind of the same dynamic that we
That's,
had.
you know, I didn't know you had a connection with him. I've always loved his playing too, man. What a great drummer,
Yeah.
and what a you know, inspirational person to be around. You know,
Like
to
my uncle, he's like my uncle. He stays at my house whenever he's in New York. So
awesome.
yeah, he was big with for that development, especially of that facet of my playing when it came to musicality, recording, precision. So a lot of what when people ask, especially why I try to execute this stuff very clean or with a lot of sort of articulation and alignment with my limbs, he was a big part of that because he'd be on like let's say a session at Skyline Studios, and then he put me on the mock session and put me under the microscope. I'd botch it horribly, and he would go to tell me everything I did wrong. So I basically kind of took that mentality of could I play this under the microscope, and then applied it through all of my development.
Yeah, cool. I thought maybe you can tell because not everyone here's a drummer. You can explain where you came up with Murder Hands because I always loved that name because
You
it's
have to ask John Longstreth about that. I think it was his idea. And then I found the logo online at the beginning of COVID because I wanted to continue it. But that was John, man. You know, I think he was him or Tobias. It was one of those guys.
I thought that was one of the best names too. I mean, you know, for people who don't, I don't got my practice pad here, but you know, we're just doing lots of chops with you know, lots of endurance. And then when I saw that name, I thought, oh my god, that's hilarious. And then it's a great community too. I mean, there's so many serious drummers and everyone's cool. And people post, hey, I'm working on this thing or check out this whatever. And that's probably my favorite group on Facebook, you know, in terms of like a drumming group, because it's like, you know, everyone's a very serious player, and then they're all nice people. As far as I've noticed, I've never seen anyone.
Yeah. No, we no bozos. No, I mean we made it a I've made it a priority just in my life to weed out the trolls and the jerks, basically.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that kind of goes back to that idea of a community, you know, because it, just to be any kind of drummer. I mean, just to put your stuff, you know, practice something and put a video out there, and I think a lot of people are kind of, you know, pretty hesitant to do that because they're everywhere. There's someone whose first thing out of their mouth is to tell you what you've done wrong. There's something, you know, they want to come in and tell you that you've done something wrong, and so I think that discourages a lot of people. So when they're able to be in a, you know, in a group where people are going to be whatever supportive or give you like actual, you know, actionable feedback. I think social media that's the good side of social media. You know, we
Yes.
hear about a lot of people talk about you know, how terrible social media is, but I mean, for us, because I don't know if the people watching this know, but I'm also a drummer, so I'm in that in that community, and we don't hear I really don't hear negative stuff from people. Occasionally, I play some exercise, and they think, you know, some guy would be like, "That's terrible. Thanks, great," you know, whatever.
I mean, the block button is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, you rarely see that though with the drumming community. Most of the people are really nice people. I mean, and I have, like you said, I have all kinds of friends I've met just on social media through drumming, and it's really helped kind of transition things, at least for me, that I've wanted to work on because I got, you know, my background was in jazz and kind of straight ahead, and you know, and then I got into other things, and I never was really into production, you know, sound recording, all that. And now that there's these great online communities, I went in a different direction because of that, just because of the, you know, the community. So
No, I think that that's great. And yeah, community, a lot of the ideas that I'll come up with or exercises that I'll adapt, just phrases or techniques that I work on, where it comes from a lot of the people that I am inspired by and have befriended online and with social media. For example, I can pull up Instagram and see someone like Ramon Montagnier doing something that I could probably never do in this lifetime.
Right.
And I'm fine with that, but I can work towards it and maybe
Yeah.
approximate something like it. But I can't do that, but it gives me something to work towards.
Yeah, yeah, and it's so neat to be able to have that direct access because I'll send comments back and forth to Ramon too, and just watching the crazy stuff he comes up with. For people who don't know him, he's a Brazilian drummer he's come up with this kind of way of using his hands, using something called push pull technique, and he also uses more than one stick in just these absolutely incredible ways. And I mean, he just really has come up with his own sound. I mean, I don't feel bad watching him do that because that's the only guy who can do that. So it's really
Yeah,
inspirational.
like no one else can do it. He is unique that way, and that's why working with him and Yoni is just awesome for me because I'm always inspired by them
Hmm. Hmm.
in some way, shape, or form at what they can do and the things they can do that I can't do. And a lot, I mean, I'll be the first to admit, yeah, in some ways, Yoni's certainly a better technical player than I am in terms of some of the stuff he can do. Absolutely. I don't have a problem admitting that. It keeps me striving for stuff.
Well, right. That's like, I think it's so important to kind of have people, who inspire you to keep practicing because it is, I mean, playing an instrument is one of the hardest things you can take on if you really want to try to be good at it. And like, I wanted to tie in something you said earlier because I think it was really important is um, so many people are in love with talent. I mean, they just love this whole idea of someone's a prodigy or they're talented. But what I've seen throughout the years is that gets you maybe a little bit of a head start, but most people who become really masterful players, it's almost never on talent alone. And there's the best drummers or at least musicians seem to be the ones who are constantly working and polishing and striving, and that's, I guess, a form of a talent, but not just this innate thing where you just grab a pair of sticks and then you're just amazing. um,
I'll put it this way. Usually, if you do that, you don't have to work as hard as the next guy. And if that person clocks in enough hours, they will surpass you,
yeah.
regardless of how long it takes. For me, at least, I think the prodigy thing, whatever, that's cool. You get it naturally, but so what? You were good at that age. How good are you at the age of 25 or 30
Right. Yeah.
in comparison? So it means really nothing to me, especially the older I get and the more I realize that a lot of those people peak or are kind of get stunted growth
Hmm.
wise because the accolades they get.
Hmm.
And for me, because I was told, nope, maybe this isn't even for you. Yeah, you're not. This is not working. Maybe this just isn't for you. If you get told that enough, it's kind of like Whiplash, the movie, the quote where he says that Charlie Parker goes after getting the cymbal thrown at his head, goes into a practice room and just practices with the goal to never be laughed at again. So I know everyone thinks that movie is very goofy, but I did like that line because it speaks to the idea of some people won't listen to no or to you're not good enough or something like that. And I think that's a valuable skill in its own right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because what a lot of people may encounter who, autistic people, they might be hearing that kind of stuff about other things,
Yeah.
a number of things. And I thought that's why it was so important to have you come on because I think that let's say you start with challenges like what you had. It in the end, you ended up having a whole bunch of strengths that possibly were innate. I mean, I think that because you talk a lot about like the synesthesia kind of,
Okay.
and I think those sort of things, given the right guidance and practice, if you're autistic, you don't have, those are things you can capitalize on. And I think other people could, I think it's great to hear that kind of info.
Well, okay, two things about that. The synesthesia thing is just one way that I just see rhythms. I've always been a visual person. I was a sketch artist as a little kid. I still will do it occasionally, but I've always been a visual person. So to me, that was kind of just two wires crossed that made me kind of see rhythms the way you'd see a drawing, almost in the sense that there's blocks falling, and I could see it almost like a grid or an abacus, let's say. Then when it comes to the other stuff, I just see the instrument in a way that other people don't see it. Where one person sees a paradiddle, I see it through a lot of different limbs and a lot of overlapping ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, sure, a paradiddle in your hands is cool, but can you do it in your feet and then play over it? Can you do it in your left side and play against it? Oh, hey, can you play that paradiddle as triplets against that paradiddle in your left side? Yeah, that's cool. Can you play patterns in quintuplets against the paradiddle in your left side? Can you reverse that to your right side? Can you do it cross limb? Like, there's an infinite amount of ideas and subdivisions and musical choices to be made just within that paradiddle. It's not just an exercise you give a kid in their hands.
Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah, I think that's one of the neat things about I really liked about drumming and just kind of improvising in general is just this idea of combinatorics. The math of combinations, and how you literally can never figure out all of the combinations because the number is so huge. It's pretty much infinity. So you can take one idea like what you're talking about, and I mean there are literally infinite iterations of it.
Yeah, I mean, can you play a paradiddle in your left side and then play a paradiddle against it, voices 19 tuplets in your right?
Yeah.
Okay, you can't do that? Well, there's something to work on.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and then what are your thoughts about people who, they might say, well, you don't need to do that. Well, I mean, the answer is, can you play it? I mean, if the answer is no, well, then like you said, it's something you can work on. Why not?
I mean, my whole thing is why I work on this stuff. I think the instrument needs people who do that. You need people that want to push the boundaries and educate others on pushing those boundaries, regardless of what naysayers may think or say about this stuff. I think it's important to have people that fundamentally do pursue actively changing how the instrument is played.
Mm-hmm.
That's how an instrument develops, to me, at least.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, because I also think that that's really applicable to what we work on as a speech pathologist, like working with how do you help kids learn to communicate? And one of the things that we're seeing over and over, because we interview a lot of people who are nonverbal communicators, they communicate through typing. But one of the types of things that we often hear from them is that they're told, oh, well, they're not going to be able to learn to read because, they're not talking. But what we see often, one of the signs that's really common we'll see with young kids who are autistic is they are hyperlexic. Whoops, it looks like I lost your camera. Whoop, you still there?
Sorry about that. Somebody just called me.
Oh, that's okay. So one of the things we see is kids are hyperlexic, so they have a kind of a early ability to read and decode words, but then a lot of times that's not expanded upon because of these preconceived notions of, oh, well, they can't do that. They can't. That's too hard to learn to type. But then we're seeing more and more people giving graduation speeches. They're typing and communicating that way. And so it's it reminded me of what you were saying is like you give people a chance, you give them the right support, and and then have these, high expectations that made me think the high expectations of, well, can you play nine, like tuplets, 19 tuplets with, as paired of,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a high expectation, and they can pull out excellence in people, if they're given the opportunity to do it. And I think that message is really important for a lot of people to hear for a lot of things like communication, drumming. I'm just curious what you think about that idea.
Well, I like everything that you just told me. I like that a technology helps with teaching these people and helping others with our condition do this. And I think drumming is functions in a similar way. But I even read an article, it was like an Instagram blog came up about how drumming can help kids with autism pay attention. It helps stimulate the brain. So I think that's another reason why I'm good at the four-way coordination stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I personally think it helped me a lot as a kid too. I got much better in school, when I took lessons, tons of drum lessons growing. I started at a young age too, um, and I felt it helped me understand, other things too, because I mean, when you start getting into higher level like coordination or polyrhythms or snare drum etudes or whatever it is. I mean, like any of the things we work on. I mean, there's a lot of like unusual things, critical thinking and coordination and all these things. They use different parts of your brain, like you're crossing hemispheres and possibly thickening your corpus callosum, where you connect the nerve fibers between each lobe, and then executive functioning, imagining what's going to be happening next when all these weird rhythms resolve. And
So that's the thing for me. Every time I work on something that I don't know how to do, it's like opening neural pathways or igniting that part of your brain, really feeling the wires stimulate. And
yeah.
that's like an addictive feeling to me
Mhm.
almost. Creates like, oh, it's a dopamine rush
Mhm.
to learn something that I don't know how to do. So when I practice, I make sure to really practice, and I make sure I don't sound good, and I work on things I don't know how to do, because that to me is real improvement.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, um, I think that's a great advice for people who are trying to learn things, because is that when you're making those connections, oftentimes something's uncomfortable, or like you said, you practice in a way where it doesn't sound good because it's practicing, and that's something a lot of people avoid. They avoid doing hard things or doing things where they might look like a chump or sound like a chump, but getting past that's how you get to the excellence.
Well, I heard a saying from a teacher that was, if he walks by a practice room and hears someone sounding good, they're not practicing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's where I'm at.
I think that's great advice, and I think it's also something a lot of people, when you might hear as an adult, oh, I'm an adult, I can't learn X, I can't learn drums as an adult. Maybe they'll say that.
Mm.
Um, what I think people are mistaking is that they don't want to sound lame, or they don't want to look like they
Mm.
don't want to look, stupid when they're learning something they can't do, because that really gets in the way. I mean, it really can. Just that feeling of your perception of yourself as a learner doing something difficult.
Oh, I would agree 100%. There is some of that, but at the same time, I do feel like, as someone who was just grew up being constantly told no or made fun of, I'm like, what's a what's one more time sounding bad, or falling on my face gonna do to me? Absolutely nothing. So at least I'm usually in my practice room, which is kind of my safe space. So hey, I don't care.
That's such a great attitude too, because I think that can be applied to other stuff, like hard things that people have to learn. I mean, like like I'll go back to the people trying to communicate using a device that can
Mhm.
be really hard. I mean, having to find, find all where the keys are, how to type fast enough where people don't interpret what you're trying to say for you, but just getting over that struggle of that anyone encounters learning anything, because that's my I guess side thing I studies. I like just learning how you learn things, how just what do you have to do to learn a skill, and the number one thing I've seen as a barrier is being afraid to look like a chump.
Yeah, well,
Once you get past that,
especially music as you're playing live, and obviously that can just be humiliating. But that's part of the growing process, part of paying your dues, and that's a big thing for me, honestly, is situations that challenge me to be better. And I find that people that don't do that a lot of times stagnate.
yeah. So what are some of your things you're working on now? I mean, like, you said you always find challenges for yourself at this point. What are you working on?
So right now, I'm because Robbie Amin and I have been hanging out a lot.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh, I love him, man. Oh,
yeah, so
what a
I've been
great
working on
player.
some stuff with Robbie. One of them is you do Kaskara on your left foot, and then
Yeah.
you do 6-8 here. So you go. And then I'm trying to put a septuplet between my left hand and my right foot as a third layer to that. But most of the time I'll match the coordination of the triplets here. So
Awesome.
so
Awesome.
that's one thing. Then you would want to do it. So everything I do with my left hand. Another thing is longer ostinato phrases. So let's say an 11 ostinato, which I would probably voice as this. So maybe put a 5 or 6 against it. Speed it up a little. Something like
Awesome.
that.
Awesome.
So then everything I do right-handed, I'll do left-handed, and that gives me a lot more facility to sort of maneuver around in these type of motions. And so whenever I do that stuff, I would put the 11 then in. It's like doubles. Put a 3 there. So trying to solo with my left side then against the right, that's an 11 top in 11. So I've been trying to improvise with it more too, which is it's quite difficult. So improvising with these longer patterns is much harder. And another big challenge for me too is doing 3s in the feet and applying them to music. So and then going like
Man, those 3s in the feet are brutal. Oh my gosh, those sound great though.
Thank you.
That sounds great.
So that's been I've also been playing on this busted pedal because that's helping to strengthen those techniques. So just being as hard on myself as I possibly can. And then I have been working on Ramon's thing because I'd like to be able to do some pastanados with one hand, like a Swiss triplet.
Yeah.
So you would have like, I don't know, maybe. So, something like that. So I've been working that type of stuff too.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that was I was just really loving is that you always have at all times like something you're working on, and I think that that's like a great message to kind of, I mean, just for anyone, whether you're neurodiverse or not, you got to have something you're working on, because I mean, it gives you motivation, it gives you a goal, it gives you some energy when to get past the frustration of learning hard things.
Absolutely. But I mean, I think my whole thing has always been that I really like the sound of all this stuff and I like the process of getting there. And I also, just due to what I like to do as a kid with the stimming, I like the feeling of having the sticks in my hands and doing the motion of the fingers opening and closing and of the movement of the molar motion. So I like that feeling.
Yeah, I think it's so awesome. I mean, that the to be able to demonstrate to people how you took something that was just, it was a natural inclination you had. I mean, and it was
I was embarrassed about it, man. Like I always tell people when they ask about how I developed that finger motion, spend your whole childhood doing this and making funny faces and you get that.
Well, it's definitely turning lemons into lemonade for sure, because all the concepts I'm listening to you put together, where you're taking things from Yoni Maydar, you're taking things from Ramon, and then you come up with your own stuff. I mean, it's your own. I can't think of anyone who's playing like you, and that's a unique contribution that you've been able to make. Just kind of synthesizing.
I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that, man. And again, one thing was because I was always taught to be ashamed of doing that as a kid, and I mean, you'd rock back and forth to make the faces, but I guess you sort of find another outlet for it. So maybe you escape doing that and then find this as an outlet for it. That's sort of, so I think by doing this and kind of harnessing that motion, that's where I could find an outlet. So instead of doing this, and then doing that, got me the hand speed. So yeah, and then I have a lot more power with this motion too, because of a lot of people using, because having that internal strength in the hand really helps. So having that motion definitely helps.
Well, I love it, man. I think it's a great message for anyone who watches this, or when we write in the article, just about how taking what you have and then building on it and making something new is really inspirational for people. And I always love watching your stuff. I try to watch, anytime your stuff pops up, I always watch it. I love all this stuff.
Oh, I really appreciate that, man. Like, again, it just means a lot to me that people find inspiration from it. And, I hope that somebody will be inspired by what I'm doing the way I was by others when I was a kid. So that's if I can help that one kid out there, then I've accomplished what I want to accomplish, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Well, I think you will, because I personally try to get, when I hear about kids who, the parents, what can I get my kids into? I think that drumming's great for autistic kids, neurodiverse kids, neurotypical kids, but particularly for neurodiverse kids, because of all of the complex, cognitive and physical and motor skills that you develop over time, if you stick with it, that they bleed into other areas, that helps you communicate.
Oh, completely. completely. It does change a lot of things for sure, and I really like that. See, I do this on like my own time here when I'm sitting here because I like that motion.
Mm-hmm.
Same with this hand. So yeah, it bleeds into a lot of things. I completely agree, and it definitely the ambidexterity thing too. I found really helped me on a
Mm-hmm.
mental level.
Mm-hmm. I've found that too. I mean, honestly, for me, I've always liked. It just I don't know why the way it feels to play traditional, and I've always had like 1,000% more chops playing traditional than I do match. Just for I don't know.
Yeah,
It's just the way it feels on my left side. I just like that. I don't
yeah.
know.
I've been working my traditional a fair amount. Like it's not bad, but I don't consider myself a specialist. Definitely much more of a master player.
Yeah.
And because of the work on the ambidexterity, I found that leading with my left hand and just having a lot more strength with that, it sounds a lot cleaner when I'm just doing it on any surface. I can even do it into the side of that. So that's been tremendously helpful in kind of updating my control and making sure that I'm, when I'm moving around the drum set or even just playing on one surface, that I have a lot of, once again, it's the autism come into play. I'm very focused on detail and cleanliness and articulation of every note. And making sure that I'm very focused on that as well.
Are there other areas that with ambidexterity? Because I wonder how frequent that or how common this is with like just autistic, neurodiverse people as this ambidexterity in general. Because I know for me, I can write with both my hands. I can handwrite with my
You
right.
are better than me. I can't. Well, I can write sort of with my left. I can brush my teeth with my left hand, like I can make coffee with my left hand.
Yeah, but I think that there's something to that. There's a benefit to working on ambidexterity just in general, and then also that maybe more neurodiverse folks they use both their hands, or they're sort of ambidextrous in different ways.
Yeah, I think it's a great thing. It certainly helped me. I felt like portions of my brain developed just maturity. I felt like a more mature person as I worked on this. It's hard to describe, but decision making, certain cognitive functions, that type of a thing. You probably would know better than I would because you know speech pathology, probably more about that chemistry than I do. But yeah, that was something that I noticed distinctly as I developed this stuff more.
That's it. That's super interesting. Well, I think because I'm looking at our time, we got about we're about on for 40 minutes. I'm thinking what we can do is maybe we'll close it up and we can like talk a little bit more off the camera, and then I'd love sharing all this because I before we leave, just the information you've been able to give about learning skills, because that's my thing. That I like to emphasize with the patients we work with, or is that learning skills is really important. And then there are actually good ways to learn skills, and there are ways like that don't work that well to learn skills. And so a lot of the things you talk about, they're real universal. I mean, whether you pick, it could be this skill over here or that skill over there, they're real similar. And then how important it is to personal development, learning a skill. I mean, I'm biased towards drumming, but I also ski. I do speed bag.
I noticed. Yes, you are a very well-rounded guy.
I just, I thank you, but it's sort of I'm just kind of fascinated with how things work. I like to figure out how things work, and I think it's really important to know a skill, or if you can learn other skills, that's good too. But it's interesting how universal it is, and the things that you're saying are real similar to what other people say for pick something else like jujitsu. I mean, you can just substitute everything you said, and then put the words jujitsu in, and it would apply.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. That's a good analogy.
Well, it's been awesome having you on here, and
My pleasure.
I think this will be a really cool article for people to read about, and just to hear, how you're just the way you started, and then just how the other thing I forgot to mention too is you're also an author. So how many? Do you have a second book on its way too?
Yeah, that's the one with Ramon. So I'm very excited about that.
Awesome.
That's, to me, that's like a New Year's resolution, is going to be seeing where that book goes.
Okay, yeah, that's great. I mean, so you got 2 books. You got. I mean, how many recordings have you been on too?
Probably like 150 at this point or something.
So,
it's a lot.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
That's so awesome. So
thanks, man.
All those things, after tons of work, it wasn't like, oh, Alex, let's just shower him with opportunity. This came from working on things and making a commitment to be the, you're the best you can be. So I think that's what is so cool about your story.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
So, okay, well, hold on one second. Let me see if we can, if I can get Lois to